let's start. Yes, hello everyone. My name is Iman Khan, and I'm the founder of Earth Warriors Pakistan. And welcome to our panel discussion on navigating the future for a plastic-free planet in celebration of Earth Day. Today, we have the privilege of hearing from two passionate climate activists, one representing Pakistan and the other representing United Arab Emirates. So let me introduce you both. Hi, hello. First, we have Aishka. Aishka is a UNICEF MENA climate justice advocate known globally for her advocacy work. Hi, so nice to meet you.
Hello, I hope you
And
can
next,
hear me. Thank you so much.
yes, we can. Thank you. Hania, next we have Hania. Hania formed Pakistan Youth Climate Alliance and has been working passionately for climate justice in Pakistan for a long time. So, as we embark this conversation, let's explore the challenges, opportunities, and strategies for creating a sustainable future free from plastic pollution. Thank you both for joining us today. So, my first question would be to Hania. So, can you share some insights into the current state of plastic pollution in Pakistan and its impact on local communities and the ecosystems?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I think with plastic pollution in Pakistan, of course, it is a huge issue as it is across the globe. And what we see is that, there's millions and millions of tons of solid waste. And according to the United Nations Development Program, that's around there's 20 million tons of solid waste annually in Pakistan, and 5 to 10% of that is plastic waste. So plastic waste, and for a lot of people, plastic waste is this idea. They don't really see it. Like we see pictures of it, but we don't actually get to sort of see those trash dumps and see the effect on marine life and see the devastating impact that plastic has. But for a lot of Pakistanis, what we see is as soon as you step outside, whether that's if you go to the beach or if you just take a walk outside, you will find in most urban cities as well these huge trash dumps, which and a lot of them they have a lot of plastic within them, and yeah, so this is something that is very clearly in front of us and in front of our eyes, and yeah, and you can't really escape it. So, for example, this is a personal story that I have, but I travel a lot through bus between cities, and I was in a bus and I was using their plastic cup that they had given, and I was looking out the window. So the bus had stopped on the motorway for a bit, and I looked out the window. There was a trash dump. Most of the plastic in that trash dump was the same plastic that I was using. So it was the same brand, the same bus and its brand. And yeah, so it's something that we can't really avoid. It's everywhere in our lives and in Pakistan especially. And according to WWF, so there's different statistics, but all of them, highlight something that's very, very, very unfortunately sad and devastating. And then in WWF, they say that 65% of Pakistan's coasts include the waste that there is over there. And Pakistan's coasts include water bottles, caps, plastic bags, and packaging.
Yeah,
So,
indeed.
although we don't need the specific statistics per se because we see it all the time. When you look at the statistics, you see the actual problem and how big it really is, and how it affects really all of our lives without us even sort of like actively realizing that it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen a lot, I've witnessed a lot of plastic pollution in Pakistan. I was born in Karachi and I've lived there for a long part of my life. So, another personal experience I had was when I went to the beach once. There was these little huts and then we went out boating. And then I saw this huge plastic, it was a plastic bag, I think, and it was on top of a really huge turtle. The turtle was, and then it was suffocating, but we couldn't really do anything and then it started to drown. I'm hoping that turtle felt better after that, but I was 9, and well, nobody really knows what went on, and we don't know, but we have to do something about it. So the next question I want to ask is for Aishka. So what are some of the key challenges and obstacles faced in the UAE regarding plastic pollution, and how are the local communities responding to these challenges?
No, thank you so much. I pretty much echo a lot of the points brought up by Hania as well. In the UAE too, we have a huge problem mainly from overconsumption and the use of single-use plastics. And we had a report that was launched by the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, which pointed to the fact that annually there is 11 billion single-use plastic that's being used in the UAE. And that was very concerning because it's and I think a lot of the time that really those statistics really show us the fact that how single-use plastics and plastics in general is so integrated into everybody's daily use and practices that people have become so habitant to it that we do not take the time to question or wonder what is the overall consequences of having plastics. And I think another issue specifically in the UAE is also around microplastics. And I don't think we talk about that enough as well, because when the plastic ends up in our ocean and in the seas, mainly in the UAE, and it is being like broken down into microplastics, a lot of the time, a lot of these microplastics enter into our own water and food systems, as well as allergens, and that's why it's facing a big health crisis to the public, mainly to children as well. And we're seeing a really big larger statistics of respiratory increase in respiratory illnesses and other forms of illnesses that is worsened due to the climate change impacts here in the UAE. And because of all of that, there has been recurring conversations that's also led and channeled by young people in the community to bring some collective actions around the usage of plastics, and especially to tackle around plastic waste systems, overconsumption, and microplastics. And now we do have I think the biggest victory since that community organizing. We went from small scale of like cleanups and advocacy to bringing a bigger policy agenda where we're looking at the complete ban of single-use plastics by 2030, and with already different sectors in the UAE adopting resolutions to remove single-use plastics and plastics from their different cycles of production and distribution. So I would say that that's where we are at right now.
Yes, thank you. I really would like to highlight the point of thank you for bringing the microplastics up, because even though this is really small, well, microplastics, but it's a really big problem. I found a report a few months ago of microplastics being found in human blood. So it's a really scary and big problem. It seems like Hania has disconnected, so I would like to ask you another question, Aishka. You also mentioned about policy changes. So can you highlight any innovative solutions or initiatives implemented by the UAE to reduce plastic waste and promote sustainable consumption practice? Because as you said, they have a overconsumption, like a really big overconsumption rate. So is there any initiative like that?
Yeah, definitely. I think the first major initiative is the complete ban of importing and the usage of single-use plastic which was sanctioned by 2024 as the UAE, and I think that was a major win. In terms of local communities, there is increased capacity building going on that has been initiated by young people, but as well as other organizations coming together to talk about how to eliminate plastics, because I think first of all people have this idea of jumping into the recycle, reuse and reduce without understanding the pattern of it, that the more we produce, the more we have to recycle and reuse and reduce. And some of the plastics that we don't talk about has recycling limitations. That means they can only recycled up to a certain capacity, after which it ends up in the landfill anyways. So I think like we have a lot to debunk, and that's why capacity building is needed to talk about how we need to restrict production in the first place, then reduce, then reuse, and then comes like recycle, and that's not the first step. That's been there. And then another important sort of I would say progress that we have made is to set up these recycling cycles that encourage people to recycle constantly and frequently, and get money as credits by bringing in recycling materials. And I think that also those credit systems also sort of encourage people to make this a habit. And we are also seeing in different parts of the UAE setting up of water stations and other forms of initiatives to reduce the carrying around single-use plastic bottles, because that's also another issue.
Yeah, like really these small initiatives, they really play a big part. As you said, like the refilling bottles, you find them around Dubai Marina a lot. So Hania, I would like to ask you almost the same questions. What initiatives or grassroots efforts are underway in Pakistan to address plastic pollution and promote sustainable alternatives?
So yeah, I think a lot of the initiatives in Pakistan, they're not specifically for plastic pollution, but what you have is that when there's grassroots organizations working, or like grassroots activists, they are always advocating for plastic, like against plastic pollution as well. So an example of this would be the Ravi Bachao Tehreek, which is basically the River Ravi in Lahore, which is one of the most polluted rivers in the world. They advocate for the River Ravi, so the different problems that River Ravi has, but one of them is the sort of the pharmaceutical pollution there as well. And so when the Ravi Bachao Tehreek is basically a grassroots movement that is highlighting the problems that River Ravi is facing, and trying to reverse them, and to bring the condition of that river to light within Lahore and across Pakistan as well. And so far that movement has really been, it has been reaching across social media especially. So that's one example. Then you have, of course, youth-led organizations that are advocating against plastic pollution. I myself have ran a few campaigns against it. And whether that's individually or within organizations. So for example, with plastic bags, before plastic bags were banned in Pakistan, they were banned in Pakistan in 2019, then they came back. But before they were banned originally, I would go when I was like little kid, I would go to the different shops nearby that I knew of, and I used to talk to them about this, and I would give them letters, and we would have petitions and all of that. And then some of them did eventually change from plastic bags to reusable bags or paper bags or whatever else. So and whenever I still go to those shops, they still have those. So and they did not go back to plastic. So yeah, so there's different advocacy that is going on. Yeah, and then there was once I made a video for the Minister of Climate Change at the time, a few years ago, and that got a lot of viewership. So there's always something going on. There's beach cleanups, of course. There's this one organization. I mean, you said you're from Karachi, so you might know about it, called Last Earthlings, and that's entirely youth-led, like young high school kids that go and do weekly beach cleanups. So yeah, so you have people that are individually speaking up about it. There's people that are doing advocacy work. There's people that are doing policy work. Um, and there's people that are, sort of they're doing grassroots organizing. There's people that do social media advocacy. So there's always something going on, and there are people that are speaking about it, organizations that are speaking about it. There's people that are doing research about it as well. So yeah, there's a lot going on. I just maybe it needs to be a little more, maybe there needs to be a little more unity, and maybe it should be more streamlined, because maybe we'll be able to make more impact that way. But yeah, those are some of the things that are going on.
Yeah, I really like how you went to the local shops and made them and convinced them to switch to like reusable initiatives, and that would have taken a lot of convincing, and that's something amazing that you've done. Even the smallest steps, they can make the biggest difference. Aishka, I want to ask you, how do you envision the role of business and industries driving the transaction towards a plastic-free economy in the UAE?
Thank you so much for that question. I think I would like to answer that question in two layers. The first layer is to recognize the fact that about 99% of the plastics currently is generated from fossil fuels. And therefore the plastic industry is heavily dependent on the fossil fuel industry. So transitioning away from fossil fuels also means looking into how we can remove plastics from our day-to-day lives, and often at times when we look at it, the major oil producing countries around the world are also the ones that does include in a lot of a creation of plastic materials and exporting of plastic materials, especially into global south countries, where Hania was talking about, how there's a lot of global waste that's being dumped in Pakistan. We ignore the fact that who is responsible for production of half of these waste that's being dumped, and we can easily also tie it to some of the top polluters or top fossil fuel industries. So we cannot go ahead in this conversation without making that linkage. And then the second area I think that we need to talk about is how do we have a multi-structural approach. So it's not just looking at the plastic as a end product. It is present in various forms in throughout various processes and in structures. So it's important to examine and have various innovative technologies to navigate how each of those sectors and each of the production cycles can eliminate the use of plastics and microplastics and single-use polluting items from these different sectors. So breaking it down instead of just viewing it as one and perfect one globe that's pushing it out also helps. And I would say this is how industries should go ahead with that approach. But last but not the least is that all sorts of industries and corporations, I think, should have meaningful dialogues with the communities and with the people who are either the beneficiaries of the end product, or who will be using the product, or who are directly being impacted by the end material, so where it ends up. So having that dialogue with the community and seeing how there can be a knowledge share is really important that we don't often see happening.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. But okay, so Hanya, how can like we all know and that youth is being empowered a lot. So how can youth engagement and advocacy play a role in driving climate change and raising awareness about the importance of reducing plastic waste? You both can jump into this question if you want.
Okay,
Hanya?
you said that youth is being empowered a lot. I would disagree with that to a certain degree. I think generally young people, they when it depends on your economic class. If you're, middle, upper middle, or upper class, that is when you were most likely like have more opportunities to be empowered. And for people that are in the lower class or the lower middle class, they really have to struggle for them to become empowered. Nobody empowers them; they have to empower themselves, and even that is very limited, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
So yeah, I think when it comes to young people and how they can sort of advocate for against plastic pollution and for plastic bag bans and plastic bans and all of that, is to sort of, there's a lot of the good part is that what we see now, especially globally and locally as well, nationally as well, is that there's a lot of young people that are coming up and starting their own organizations, they're starting their own movements, they're starting their own groups, and they're leading them. So yeah, I think that's one of the steps that all of us can sort of take, is if we can start something locally or in our schools or universities, that we can definitely join the organizations and the movements that currently already exist, and use those platforms to advocate for change. So, for example, right now, I'm running the one of the societies in the educational institution that I go to, and it's a struggle in the sense that a struggle to occupy our space as students. As students, what do we want? Like, what kind of change do we want? We don't want to go and do the same things that the generation before us were doing. And there's always that sort of conflict where we want to do something, and the people that have more power, that in the hierarchical structure, they want something
Yeah.
else. So yeah, so that awareness, I think, to combat plastic pollution is to increase political awareness, because climate and environment and plastic are all political problems.
Yeah.
And when we raise political awareness, we get to the point where we start solving the problem. Because plastic pollution is just one it's one drop in the ocean when it comes to the problems that we see in regards to the environment. And what Aisha already said is that, for example, in Pakistan, the waste that we have is being sent from countries abroad as well. So it's not just our waste; it's their waste as well. And this was recently brought to light that even our National Assembly, which is the assembly where our legislators legislate, um, even they were surprised to know that waste was coming from other countries. So, there's a lot that we need to do, of course, but how young people can be part of it is to I think, just start talking about it. Just start,
Yeah.
talking to the people around us and getting involved as best as we can, because, there's so much needed. Whenever you look at environmental organizations or groups, they always need help. Like, they will always need help, especially if they're volunteer based.
Yeah.
So however you can help, and one of the best things that you can do is build your own capacity, or be around people that can help you build your capacity, so that in the future you can help others do that as well. And through that capacity building, not just in understanding environmental issues, but how to advocate for them, and what works and what doesn't, because every country, every locality, every region is different. And the activism that we do here in Pakistan or in a certain city in Pakistan is going to be very different from, for example,
Yeah.
what you do in the UAE or what you do in America. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, especially highlighting the problem of classes, because some people, they're not really heard, and sometimes those are the people that should be heard, because the people in the lower class, they're most impacted by climate change. People in indigenous communities, for example, they don't really have a voice. So we should also start to empower them, right? So, Aishka, would you like to add on this? How can youth engagement and advocacy play a role in driving climate change and raising awareness?
No, yeah, I would like to. I won't talk about local actions and movemental actions, which Hania just incredibly covered, so I don't want to duplicate, but just echo plus plus. I think what I would like to add about is there is a global plastic treaty that is currently being negotiated, and the main goal of the global plastic treaty is to cut plastic pollution by 80% by 2040. Around 200 countries are involved in this negotiation process and have created the first ever draft of this treaty. So I would encourage young people who are specifically, working around tackling plastic pollution to look at what this global treaty is going to do and help shape, like come together in your own countries, create your own demands and take it to the global treaty. So then your demands as young people from your own countries who are being impacted is directly um, seen and taken into consideration in the global treaty. And I would say that it's also an opportunity to hold talk to your own ministries and see, have conversation with them and hold them accountable on, are you attending the treaty and what contributions are you making to the treaty? And if they are, make sure that they are including the voices of young people.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think that's one advocacy that we really need to work on. And as I said, the plastic industry and the fossil fuel industry are just two sides of one coin. And there is also the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty, and there is an entire youth movement mobilizing the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. I'm one of the youth champions for the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty, so I would highly encourage any young person to go take a look at it and see how you can get involved in that particular level as well, because your lived realities and the local knowledge that you hold is extremely vital to shape these global treaties, and we need to make sure that they're not missed out in the process.
Yeah, we have to make sure they're not missed out. So, Aishka, what are some success stories or maybe inspiring examples of individuals or organizations leading the way towards a plastic free future in the UAE? And how can these efforts be scaled up or replicated?
I think there are several inspiring stories in the UAE, and it's mainly, led by young people here because they are extremely, for us living in the UAE, it's so incredible to see that there's multiple nationalities and cultures that come here to transcend all of those different barriers to call one place home, and it's like a mixing pot, and I think that's so incredible. And when we do call this place home, we are very much paying tribute to the heritage and the culture and the various ecosystems that has shaped the lives of this land for generations.
Yeah.
And we at the front of our eyes are seeing this exact epitomes being lost. So that is in terms of the ecosystems, but also in terms of cultural sites and heritage sites that is being degraded. So for us young people, a lot of our identity is shaped by this environment, and we want to make sure that the generations to come are also being shaped by these exact environments that we hold so much value in. And I feel like, or based off of that, there has been a lot of youth-led initiatives
Yeah.
where we have been having one like cleanups in the mangroves, but also mangrove restoration projects. And I would say, and I would say the lobbying to have the work that we did together with the ministry to make sure the ban on the plastic, single-use plastic, which is into motion as of now in 2024, came together. So that's another achievement. And most recently, when Dubai was flooded, extremely flooded, there has been, like, after the floods, a lot of the ecosystems, even the roads and the pathways, has just been now left with all of the plastic and the various waste. And there has been several community led cleanups that where we are sorting out the waste and taking it back to recycling centers. And the floods in Dubai was also a really like important moment of reflection on what the climate change impacts looks like in this country and in this region, and how as communities we can be resilient, and we can build our resiliency to adapt to the climate crisis.
Yeah, UAE has various amazing ecosystems, even more than deserts. I like the fact that you brought up the mangrove restorations, because I've done many projects on that. I've been to some camps of restoring mangroves. So, Hania, as climate activists, what actions do you believe individuals and communities can take to contribute to a plastic-free future, and how can we inspire collective action?
Yeah, that's so. First, I just want to say that's so cool that you've done projects on mangrove restoration. That's very, I really appreciate that. Yeah, so I think what actions we can take as individuals and communities. I think I've already covered a bit about that, but just going over some of what Pakistan has been doing, and how we can use that sort of as individuals and communities. I think we don't need to, as Aishka already said, that there is a global plastic treaty that's going on, and then there are all the fossil fuel non-proliferation. I'm not going to say that treaty. And the plastic bag ban that was in Pakistan in 2019, which for some reason they reversed. There's so many other projects and treaties and international frameworks and negotiations that are going on. And here in Pakistan as well, you have policies that come up. And not just policies. There's different projects that the government starts as well, and people start. The only problem with, at least in our country, is that it's not very like we implement it, but it's not very consistent. So, something will start and then it'll be there for a few years and it'll die down. And I think that is one thing that we can learn from international youth movements as well, is their consistency in advocating for a certain treaty, and to continue to do that once we agree with a policy and we believe that this is the best course of action. We should continue to advocate for it, to speak about it, to do our best, and be able to, whenever we have access to government officials, to bring those policies up again and again and again as young people, even if we're not, in the same sort of locality or same organizations. We should be advocating for similar policies that we do believe are going to bring that policies that we believe that would bring change and that are good to implement, especially ones that have been implemented in the past and worked. Then the government changed, and then it sort of fell out. So I think that's one thing that we can do as individuals. And I think as communities, already we have, once we got together, young people in my neighborhood and some of my friends from different areas, and there was this huge trash dump, and we cleaned that up. So I think as communities, one of the things that we can do is look around us and see what needs to be advocated for, what needs to change.
Yeah.
There's this one thing that goes on as well. There was this one movement that started, which was when people saw something that they wanted to change, they would just sort of get a marker or a chalk, and they would like write on it, you need to fix this. And so and then those things actually started apparently getting improved. So you can always do things like that. And then we cleaned up that trash dump, and although the trash dump came back 2 weeks later because it's a systemic problem, we still, it showed people that there is a trash dump and we shouldn't be ignoring it, and we should be holding our local authorities responsible for it. And eventually they did clean up the trash dump when they wanted to make a house on top, so they had to. But it's sad that it had to be for property and retail, and for estate selling or whatever, and for that to be the reason why they cleaned it up. But yeah, I think those are some of the things that we can do as a collective. Like for example, the Ravi Bachao Tehreek is also just one individual that started, and he saw the River Ravi's condition, and he just started posting on social media. And some of the posts that you see on the social media on Instagram for Ravi Bachao Tehreek is just him saying, I'm going to be at the press club. I'm going to be protesting, and I don't like. I invite everybody, but if there is nobody, I'm still going to be there, even if I'm alone. And that is how a lot of our activism also starts. That is how mine as well started. Is it's just okay, I'm going to plant trees. I'm going to advocate against plastic bags. I'm going to advocate against plastic. I'm going to write to the minister for climate change, and I will do this even if I am alone in doing it, even if I am the only one that shows up. So you always invite other people, but if it's only you, then it's only you, and that's fine. And that's how you build, I think, movements and groups and communities and your activism and other people's activism. Yeah.
That's amazing. It really goes to show even the smallest things, they can make a really big difference. So last but not least, but I would like to ask you both, what message do you want to give our viewers watching us right now? Hania or Aishka?
Maybe I'll take Hanya's lead.
I really like how you describe your audience. Like, I would want to be your audience because you call them glorious. I feel like that's such a beautiful word. I don't think I have ever been called glorious as an audience member. Yeah, so yeah, I think that's really nice. You're a very, very cool host. Yeah, I think one of the messages that I would want to give is to I think maybe just just start. I think especially for women and brown women, like as brown women, I know that not everybody watching is a woman, so apologies to the men. But generally, the world is not really with us usually, and so for us to realize that the disproportionate impact of climate and environmental issues are on marginalized communities, are on people of color like us, are on people that are from the lower classes. And so, for us to be in these spaces, to speak up, and to never sideline ourselves. And I know this seems very far off from the plastic-free planet, but it is very interlinked with it, because it is when people like us step up that we will see a plastic-free planet. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So Aishka, would you like to go next? Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. First, I just wanted to say, Iman, you're such a inspiration yourself, and you do so much incredible work, and that energy is channeling off on the both of us. I can confirm on Hani and I. And with that energy, I think what I wanted to share is that often at times with the recurring informations that's just like put onto our faces about how the world is warming up and the pathway to 1.5 degrees Celsius is becoming further and further away from our reach, and the ocean pollution is increasing, and there are biodiversity being lost. And in the sea of all these information, it is so easy to feel hopeless, and that nothing can be fixed, and this is it. But I think it's very important to give ourselves the reminder that we are not the first wave of revolution that wanted to bring about change, and we will not be the last. And so if you start now, like, you don't have to worry, you will not be the last. And there's a whole movement that is waiting, and sometimes it can feel alone when you do this work, so it's important to find a movement that you feel closest to your heart and join the movement and do this work as a collective. So then there's a lot of solidarity formed over there, and we were able to work together, and not individually. And I think at last it's also important to make sure that you are taking care of yourself throughout these process, because this work that we do as activists, as advocates, as change makers, as they like to call us, is extremely tiring and exhausting. So it's okay to realize that we need community, we need help, we need support, and we need to be in some of these fights together. And our sustenance will also result in the sustenance of the planet and our communities. So let's keep that in mind as well.
Thank you, Ashka, for bringing that up. I would also like to say that it's, of course, completely normal and completely valid if you want to take breaks. You also have to take care of yourself as well as taking care for the planet. So thank you for bringing that up. So thank you to our esteemed panelists for sharing your insights and perspective on navigating the future for a plastic-free planet. As we commemorate Earth Day, let us remember that the importance of collective action, innovation, and collaboration in addressing the urgent plastic pollution problem. Together, we can make a sustainable and resilient future for generations to come. Thank you. Thank you, and goodbye to you all. Bye.